Let's break the mold. Start believing and stop waiting for the other shoe to drop. Welcome to Wild on 7, presented by Pilot Games. We're here until it's here.
All right, welcome back. This is Wild on 7th, your favorite Wild podcast, presented by Pilot Games. Special thanks to all our sponsors, Duke Cannon, Aquarius Home Services, Jimmy's Salad Dressings and Dips. It was a long road trip for the Wild. They went Western Canada swing, lost in Calgary, lost in Edmonton, found their game in Vancouver, came back home, quick turnaround against Edmonton. Played really a solid game, Kinger. We'll have to get into how they performed against in the battle of the 97s. It's kind of nice we've had two of those in the last 12 days, but we'll touch on some other stuff too. I mean, Sammy Walker's been a real bright spot, goaltending, and I mean, are the Wild actually that tough? Who should be the one fighting? We've got some stuff on Char-Doer, shorthanded prowess, things like that. So we'll get into it. But before we do that, Kinger, how have you been, man? It's been a week.
I've been pretty good. I wanted to ask you, the players have an off day today. They're not practicing. What do they do? Like, you were an NHLer. Like, what? Like, do they sleep? Do you sleep till noon, or do you get up? Do you go to the mall? What are these guys doing? I'm honestly like, are they texting each other? Are they watching the new Christmas Story, the remake?
Sadly, I don't think it's anything fun or exciting.
When do they wake up?
Cooler if it was.
There. When do they wake up? Do they sleep in?
Yeah, I think they would sleep in.
Like 10 is sleeping in.
So this is what's different about the NHL versus any other level too. So if you play college, you're with guys that are 18 to 22 years old, and you guys are all on the same page. Maybe some have a significant other, but they're not completely tied down. So you all hang out and do everything together, and you're all kind of on the same schedule.
Same life stage.
And for the most part,
you go to Chipotle. Yeah. Basically.
You make a plan to go to Chipotle.
That's it. And then after, you're like, we should go to Chipotle tomorrow.
Right. Or maybe what else we got?
We'll go
let's go to a movie. Yeah. Let's grab a beer or something. In the American League's very similar too. For the most part, it's 20-year-old guys to 28-year-old guys. There'll be outliers there and veteran guys that stick around to have that presence. But for the most part, it's just an expansion of that. So it's like you're going to like an upscale Chipotle. You might sit down now.
I like this. This is like the weirdest group text ever.
Yeah.
Because even Kirill can be like, Zuki, you want to go to Chipotle? And he's like, I have a kid.
Right. And so
he's like, what?
So the American League
when did that happen?
The American League is also great too, because the games, I mean, they'll play 3-3, so it'll be Friday, Saturday, Sunday.
Yeah.
And you're getting Monday off, and Monday's not like a big party night, so you might plan day beers for your one day off, knowing that you've got 5 days before you play again. So Monday day would be a fun day in the American Hockey League. The NHL days off, it's different because you all of a sudden have guys from across the globe, from 18 years old to 40 years old. So half your team will have kids, and half will be like, I'm getting up at 7:30 and I'm going to take the kids to Mall of America and we're going to go on rides. And then you'll have other guys that are like up until 3 a.m. because they can't sleep, sweating about the game or something that they did. And so they'll sleep till noon and they'll go grab Chipotle. So it's across the board, I think, in the NHL.
This was a great perspective. I like it's the weirdest group text ever. Some guys are replacing batteries in their fire alarms. Other guys are just like sleeping and watching White Lotus.
Yeah.
I mean, it's great.
Some guys are probably tending to their outdoor rink. I know that right now I'm stressing about it. The weather is not good for the ODR, and we'll see, man.
Now it's going to snow. What's your projection on do you have a name for your outdoor rink?
No, I don't have a name for it.
Why not?
I don't know. I suppose I haven't thought about it. Like, call it like Magnus Rink or something like that?
No, mine was called the Ice Castle, where the Kings play. And I was going to knock off the White Castle logo and just make it just exactly like White Castle, but Ice Castle. Never did that, never painted it on there, but I did refer to my rink as the Ice Castle. What would yours be?
Well, perhaps right now what I'd go with...
Like Carts Cove?
Well, I would say it's already...
Cooley? Cooley?
It's already taken. Arizona in the NHL playing a college building. I kind of feel like they stole it. Mullet Arena.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
That is a great name. Supposedly that's a real benefactor. That's not possible.
I don't know.
They say that the people that gave the money had the last name Mullet, but that's just the
sound like cool people.
That's the greatest PR thing ever.
They sound like cool people.
But back to the Wild. So great win last night. I think last night was the prototype of how we want to play
this year.
Yes. When Foligno was here, one of the guys, when they played Carolina, was like, hey, this is us. They did like the two Spider-Man thing, looking at each other, and they're like, this is, if we do what they're doing, we're going to be good. And I really think that's exactly what they did last night. Win a low-scoring game, tight checking, playing smart, good goaltending, good structure. It's different than last year, but to me, if last year ends with a first-round playoff exit, I don't really care about last year. So if we're learning stuff and it's going to be better in the real season, I'm all for it.
Right. And I do think that the Wild are learning that. And Connor McDavid, when he comes to town, Draisaitl, I think automatically it puts your antenna up. Like, you know that you have to be good that night. And it's not just you might lose the game. You legitimately might be embarrassed. He can embarrass you on the ice. So everybody's kind of, they tighten things up and you're aware and ready to play. The Wild looked that, and there was a commitment, I think, from all 20 guys on a certain style of play. And Edmonton, and McDavid and Draisaitl, that top line, they're great. I'd say they're a 1.5 line team. It's Nugent Hopkins and then Yamamoto, and it kind of really falls off after that. And you didn't notice, I didn't, for the most part, notice a lot of danger on the other two lines, and
they're just not a scary team.
They're not.
I know that McDavid is great and so is Draisaitl, but there's just something about Edmonton that is just not terrifying at all.
Other than those guys. Those guys are terrifying.
I know, but you can
There's
smother
more
those
terrifying
guys.
You can, and that's
you can be like, they can get stuck in the elevator here at Tria Rink, you know what I'm saying, for a couple games, and then if you advance.
Right.
I'd be fine playing Edmonton.
Well, so that's where it's also intriguing, because in that matchup, and it was 3 games in 12 days, each team held serve at home. So when the Wild could get their guys out against McDavid and Draisaitl, it was, okay, we win these games, and they get their matchup. But in Edmonton, when they were able to get their guys away from the Eriksson Ek line, maybe away from Jonas Brodin, Jared Spurgeon, they were able to have success, and they were able to score, and they were able to tilt the ice a little bit. That's where the regular season and some of these games start to matter, like first round playoff exit. If you have to go up there and play home ice in Edmonton against Connor McDavid, that's advantage Edmonton.
It's a lot harder.
Well, it's all of a sudden becomes a lot harder. It's the same team where it doesn't scare you now, but having them have last change 4 times, all of a sudden it's like, okay, this is the real deal, But I think you're absolutely right too, that Edmonton's not all that scary in the fact that their defense doesn't scare you. They're not Darnell Nurse, and how about that? Those guys actually put me in a headlock after the second period, because they were jawing at each other and sticks were flying, and I was between the bench, and I was kind of all nervous that I was going to get hit, but then I wanted to listen to it, but then I was supposed to be talking on the broadcast. I was just what
is it like in between the benches?
It's good. It's fun. I enjoy it because it's when you're back to where you're playing, you see the game, and I appreciate little stick plays, little passes, and how they're picked up, and you see the lanes and the plays develop. The game's really easy from 100 feet up in the air, and it's nowhere near as easy when you're down there on ice level. So I like to be down there in the action. You can see the bench, and yesterday I could see Woodcroft looking over at Evison, and Evison, who he says he's not a huge line matcher, he was focused on making sure he got the lines. And when I'd look over, his head would be snapped towards their bench, saying, you look for little things like who stands up at what time. Okay, now that's the line that's up, and then you can react and call who you want up to match it. And it seemed like Evison wanted Eriksson Ek out there against McDavid, and he didn't want the Kaprizov line. And we'll have to get into that, because what does plus minus mean? That's a talker a little bit later. But yeah, it's in between the benches it's fun. It's a good environment. It's dangerous though. And it could be, like I said, I got put in an absolute headlock after the second period, because Greener's given Darnell Nurse, the business, and you're the worst $9 million player in the league. I don't know how you got that deal. And there was a lot of chirps flying back and forth.
How is the talk? Is there a lot of it?
There, there really isn't, and it takes a play on the ice to really incite a lot of it, I think. And something happened out there towards the end of the second period that got under guys' skin, and so then it started to pick up, but it got quiet real fast. And again, that's where having guys like Marcus Foligno and Reeves on your bench. It really silences the chirps from the other bench, at least of the guys on the ice.
I feel like when you're between the benches too, you had to go interview Spurgeon, like you were like over the thing. And then they asked you a question like right after you were done, like you had to like move back into they don't take it easy on you. Cause I mean, it has to be hard. It's like you're doing a Pink concert, you're spinning from above or something. And then you just got to be a normal analyst. Yeah.
And I think that's just experience too, but there was a lot there was a lot going on between the benches yesterday. So, but that's when it was fun, man. A lot of action. And that's why I like being down there. But let's get into the plus minus a little bit. I know you had some questions on that.
Yeah. So hockey fan talking to hockey analyst, great hockey mind, Ryan Carter. That could be the name of your rink. So sometimes people get into face-offs, and I kind of know how you feel about that, but like, how valuable is plus minus as a statistic, right? Because if you said Kaprizov is by far the difference maker on this hockey team, but he's a -8, Zuki a -10. Addison, who's completely transformed the power play, and I know he's not getting pluses and minuses on the power play, but -10 when he's not, when he's even strength. Is that a tell, or do you kind of go skill guys, the guys that put, goals in the bucket, I don't really care what their plus minus is. Is it a stat that's for some people, or is it for everyone?
I think it's one of those stats that I think you have to take, like you take analytic stats where it can tell you something, but you've got to use your own eyes and decipher, because you could have a D-man that just makes a terrible read in a play and coughs a puck up. It's a breakaway the other way, and 4 other guys eat a minus because of that, right? Yeah. But you could also argue on the flip side of that, the same scenario could play out the other way, where one guy just makes a great play and gets an unassisted goal and everybody else gets a plus. So you have to take it with a grain of salt, but where it does matter are in the outliers. And I think if you have to look at every team too. So the team, if they're, plus 20, and then you have a guy on your team in terms of goal differential, and then you have a guy that's like a -10, that's an outlier. That tells you something. Either he's having a tough season, then you can do a deeper dive into it to say, okay, is he a liability? Is this where it pops up? And then what's his matchup? Who's the partner? What line is he on? What's his role? I think role matters too.
So if the team's +3, like the Wild are, then you're just keeping an eye on, so then Zuki's a -13 in a way. Is that what you're saying, kind of?
Well, no. The way I say it is, if your team's a +3 and you're within like a reasonable range there, so all of a sudden, if your team was a +3 and let's say there's a guy in the Wild that's a -20, that's an outlier. You're like, that's a problem.
And it can be the other way,
right?
It's like,
and there are. Jared Spurgeon is that
he's
guy.
A +11. Yeah.
You'll have guys that are on minus goal differential teams that are plus players, and that is a huge endorsement to that individual. And it's the same. So the club like Boston, who's what, +48?
+48, crazy.
Yes, and I know their power play's been good, and you don't get plus minuses for the power play, but if there are guys that are minus on that club, that's where you can look at it and say, all right, that might tell us something about that player.
So let's talk goal differential for a second, because it's interesting. If you look at the West, right, Vegas +18, Winnipeg +20, Dallas +23. You look at the powerhouses in the East, Boston +48, crazy. Toronto +23, Devils +36, Pitt +18. But it's interesting, when it comes to playoffs, I feel like so much of that just goes out the window, because you have to be able to win tight games. Mm-hmm. And it seems like every night, there's always like one blowout for each team, and then the rest of them are close. And when I saw that Carolina was basically, I think they're a +7, they're in 3rd place in the Metropolitan. They remind me of a mirror image of the Wild. I kind of like how our play is trending. We're figuring out our structure. We have a legitimate stud in 97. I think Boldy's becoming another one. Zuccarello's been great. It seems like I don't know. I really think we're setting ourselves up for the postseason in terms of how we're playing and adversity and even injuries.
Yeah, and I think, I was listening to something the other day, and they're talking about Florida. And Florida is having a down year compared to last year, and they've got the new coach. It was Brunette now out, Paul Maurice in, and they're just not having the success. And he's doing different things with the goaltending and a rotation. And yeah, they lost Huberdeau and Mackenzie Weegar to Calgary, but they picked up Kachuk. So it's a different fit for a lot of reasons. But what they're saying is that team's looking more and more and more like a team that can win a playoff series. So Florida all of a sudden had the talent, had a lot of things going for them, lost in the playoffs last year, but they're learning now how to win when it matters. And it's not as sexy of a regular season, but they're a better team for it. I think you go to the West, the Wild might be a very similar team in that it looks a lot different. Things have changed. And are they learning things that can help them be a better playoff team? And I think the answer to that is yes. A big piece has to be the maturity, though, of some of these young guys. I mean, and the question marks are still always going to be there. Can Sam Steele hold that place between Kaprizov and Zuccarello? Can Boldy continue to be better? But I think the Wild, again, if we go back to the Edmonton game last night, they should have taken something away from that. That's the style that they have to play to win this year. Last year, they could score 4. They could fall down 2 goals, score 4 or 5, and come back and win it.
And I love a 2-1 hockey game. I'm sorry. That's like a steak dinner, man. Just, cut it up. Don't cut it all up right away. That's disrespectful. Maybe one bite at a time, maybe a little salt. 2-1 hockey game is enjoyable.
I need to know now how you eat your steak. Are you a steak sauce guy?
Oh, God, no, never.
Ketchup?
I like the taste of steak. Nothing.
Just salt and pepper.
A lot of salt. I think you can't have enough salt on a steak.
Interesting.
I'll do a New York strip from time to time just because it's like bigger. It's like I want to eat a catcher's mitt. But I've gotten into the bone-in ribeye. That's nice. What's your cut?
I'm a New York strip guy.
Yeah. It's like, I don't know, it's like clean play club, right? It's like how you're raised. That's a big piece of meat. I want to eat that.
Yeah. So preparation, what do you like?
What do you mean, how it's cooked?
Doneness.
Well, I know it's like supposed to be still moving or you're a loser. I usually do the pink in the middle medium and probably need to graduate to medium rare. I don't say what do they say? Tackle it and throw it on the plate. I don't like it undercooked, I guess.
I'm a medium guy too, because there's a window of acceptance there. It can be a little less and it's still good. A little more, and you're bummed, but it's still okay.
If you ever take your finger and just touch it, that's when it's probably not enough.
But how often, when you go out for a steak, how often is it more overcooked than undercooked? For me,
the good places, I feel like, especially in the Midwest, if you say medium, they almost do you a solid. We know what you mean.
Right.
You want it cooked great. But then there's a lot of places that it's just gray. You're like, oh, that sucks. I totally screwed this up. But I want to talk just a little bit about Seattle's up there in the standings, and it's really freaking me out because I keep looking at their stuff to be like, what is this? I mean, is that going to run out at some point?
I think so. It's a different team. Their goaltending, again, a lot of it comes down to goaltending and progression or regression to the mean. It was Grubauer last year for the most part that had the net. They brought in Martin Jones, and he's been really good for them. But his career has kind of shown that he can be good in spurts, but then he can really struggle for spurts too. I don't think he's gone through the struggle. Seattle had lost 3 of their last 4 or something too, so they're starting to come back down to earth. But this is where I think I have to eat a little bit of crow right now. At the beginning of the year, one of the first podcasts, I said, sometimes it takes these teams with new coaches a fair amount of time to get going. So I wasn't overly concerned with a team like Dallas, like Winnipeg. I thought that, you could get ahead of them early on. And boy, it turns out full training camp, those teams are legit. All of a sudden. So
new voice in the room.
Yeah, new voice in the room. And I think if you go to Seattle, it's their coach he's had those guys for a year. They're still comfortable. The voice is still loud and still one that they listen to. And it's a very structured hockey club. So it's almost like a Tortorella team where they're playing within a system, and the system is really helping them win games. And that takes a lot of commitment. And I think those coaches, they're detail oriented, but they have a shelf life. So we'll see how long that these guys continue to buy in on that.
I like the theme of the Florida example you gave earlier about having a fantastic regular season is just so overrated, right? It's like your high school girlfriend, right? Like once you go to college, you're breaking up with her at Thanksgiving, right? So we want grandkids. We want the Stanley Cup. We want marriage. We want the long journey till death do us part. We don't need to be trading mixtapes with our high school sweethearts. Like the regular season is super overrated. Let's stay in the playoff picture. It is a good feeling to see us in third place in the Central, even if it's just for a minute, to be like, we're out of like this. It's like we've been hanging on to the ledge by our fingernails the entire season because of how we started. And just to finally be like, we're on the ledge. We're standing on the ledge. It definitely feels better. Speaking of coaches, we got some big news cards with our guest today.
We do, yeah. And it's a rare guest, and it's not somebody that you're going to have heard on a podcast before.
No, he doesn't do this. But the thing I will say about this guy is when he really trusts people and he knows that you're the master of your craft, he's willing to try something for the first time and spend time with you.
Right. So on that, we should bring him in and get him involved here. We've only got a little bit of time with him, so
this is sponsored by Duke Cannon. I'll talk about that afterwards. But any interview on our podcast is. So if you're looking for a good gift this holiday, Duke Cannon is there for you. So why don't you lead us off with this special guest?
All right. Well, hey. I know you don't like to do podcasts and be out there in the media, Dean. So we really appreciate you swinging by. We'll keep this short, kind of like one of your post-game, pre-game pressers a little bit.
A lot like one of those, actually.
Yeah. So, but yeah, when you got the news, or did you agree to come onto the podcast? Were you happy about it?
Can I or will I?
Yeah. So can you or will you come on to the podcast? Yeah, maybe that's not phrased the right way, but yeah, Dean, nonetheless, thanks for coming.
Yeah. And hey, Dean, so I know you guys just had the Western Canada swing. As I understand it, there was some reindeer games up there, maybe playing some contests with the team building exercises. Is it true that you even went to the Renaissance Festival in Banff? Is that something true? And what effect do you expect that to have on the team?
Probably took a bit out of us, I guess, maybe. I thought our guys handled it pretty well, with the juggling and...
That the devil stick will get you. I mean, if you can't look right at them.
Well, if you haven't juggled the devil stick, you haven't lived. So these guys are living right now. Dean, last week, I lost a bet, and it was because of the success of the team. The homestand, you guys went 5-2, and I had bet that I would take my shirt off. And Kinger, I brought him in on the bet with us, and he agreed to take his shirt off. Is that something that is healthy for us as a group, as a podcast, to do things together?
I think that's very healthy, as long as you stay with the team concept.
Okay, Coach. So building on that, you've long said when you play on the Wild, we're all teammates. We're interchangeable pieces. It's a bit like Abby Lee used to say to the dance moms, we're all replaceable. So now that the podcast has had some early success and you're kind of a part of it too, being on the show, how do you feel about the early success of the Wild on 7th podcast?
I have no idea because we're not that good, right?
Oh, okay.
Right.
So there's that.
Thank you, sir.
So, Dean, I think everybody's well aware by now your post-game antics, especially after an overtime win. You get pretty excited. You can run down and maybe turn that bench into a WWE match, maybe a UFC bout. You turn into Conor McGregor a little bit. At any point, are you nervous at all that perhaps you might catch Darby on the jaw with one and put him down a little bit, or that they might have to bring the stretcher out?
Maybe, Joe. I don't. Yeah.
So I'm, You know, Coach, one of the things, you've got a superstar on this team, number 97, and I'm just wondering if, as we look in the future, I feel like doing the podcast, such close proximity to Tria, that I'll probably end up being friends with Kirill, maybe ice bath with him, or I don't know, go to the Mall of America, Eden Prairie Center. Is that something, if you look ahead, is that something that you also see in the future, that blooming friendship?
That crystal ball, I broke it a long time ago.
So he just doesn't know if you'll have a future friend or not.
It's not his choice.
Well, Dean, I tell you what, again, we really appreciate you stopping by. I've just got one more question for you.
Fantastic.
Well, okay. I suppose I'm going to waste this one here. So, King, why don't you take it?
So I know this was obviously a great experience, and thank you so much for coming on. We know you've been a big fan from the sidelines, but what should we expect? Is this going to be a reoccurring guest for us? Should we expect more in the future?
It'll be less next year, yeah.
All right, well,
that was great.
I appreciate you stopping by, Dean. Don't forget that was sponsored by Duke Cannon. Dean, grab something on your way out. You've got
we got these big bricks of soap and
soap.
Stay clean at the golf course. Yeah, we got all these seasonal soaps from Duke Cannon. If you want to have great flavors that are kind of inspired by the holiday season, and if you have to give a gift at work, Secret Santa, toss something in a stocking. Can't recommend these big bricks of soap from Duke Cannon enough. They smell awesome, and they kind of have a bit of a laugh when you open them. And so check that out at dukecannon.com or at Target. They're all over Target as well.
I want to get into Sammy Walker a little bit, and just tell me about how excited you were when you found out this guy was going to put the Wild sweater on NHL game, because you grew up in Edina. I can tell the beautiful hair, the dapper clothing.
That's right. That's right. Keep going.
Yeah. But you're a big golfer fan too.
I am. So the interesting thing with Walker was the first thing you saw was the fight video. Like they usually went like this. Sammy Walker got in a fight and actually he beat someone up, was kind of how it came across the group text. It seems like the guy he chose to fight was also a big-time scorer, this Rees, R-E-E-S, maybe the top two scorers on both teams that were playing. But yeah, guy from Edina when was Sammy Walker's last fight? That's what I want to ask.
Is that a statement? Are you saying that's a statement? Sammy Walker, Edina getting in a fight. That's
if he were here right now, I mean, he could be. I guess we could play some audio from him. But when was your last fight, Sammy? Like at the Galleria? Like when did you last get in a fight? Like, were you at the Edina Country Club and you're like, these spoons aren't silver, and you like threw down? Like when? That's not a normal thing. And
that's true, and you can relate to that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I got a scar and stuff. I don't know what Sammy has. He wears a little turtleneck, I noticed.
That's what I was going to get to. It's kind of a throwback. I love it.
I don't know about the turtleneck.
I love the turtleneck.
It gives me neck guard vibes. So it like makes me think of Canada and the World Juniors.
Maybe that's his way of staying young, because the neck guard, I think, is kind of mandatory. It has been mandatory in parts of Canada and other spots, but I know he's from Edina.
So you think he's got a neck guard underneath the turtleneck?
No, he doesn't. He just wears the turtleneck. And
it throws me off.
It reminds me of back in the day.
Is that hot?
They used to have Bauer undergear with like a nice little neck on
Light blue.
Yeah. And that's what it reminds me of. And he is a little bit of a throwback, I think. So I love the turtleneck. Absolutely love the turtleneck.
I think with Walker, watching him in Minnesota, the thing with Sammy was always, he's so fast. Can his brain go as fast as his feet? It was always kind of the question. And I think you always felt like the higher he goes in hockey, he's going to get better and better because he's going to be playing with so much speed. And there were like his freshman year at the U was phenomenal. He was the best part of the Gophers. He was awesome. I think he was a captain by a sophomore.
Yeah, he was only 3-time captain.
Yep. But he really kind of, in some ways, he didn't peak his freshman year, but he kind of came in with a splash, a little bit like I think he's happening now with the Wild. And I just want to see him keep going and playing at speed. Him and Boldy kind of had a little like college hockey thing happening last night that I was noticing. It seemed like they had some chemistry together, which was nice. Yeah, I mean, the fight is actually the thing that throws me off the most. I got to talk to him.
Like,
more.
Do you want more of it?
No, he's
You just want to know like where it came
you realize
from?
when he was at the U, he played on a line with Brzezinski? How do I even say that? Brodzinski, Walker, and who was the other one? I don't remember. It was called the BMW line. I'm like, this is perfect. I mean, turtleneck. He was on the BMW line in college. Mr. Hockey, all of it. But
What could be better, like the Range Rover line, or the
the BMW line was great. Now I feel bad. I can't remember the other player's name, but I don't know if I told you this story. When I was in middle school in Edina, there was a big fight was going to happen. And so everyone knew there was going to be a fight after school between these two guys. And we all went outside to watch the fight. And this is God's honest truth. Before the two guys started fighting, the one guy looked at the other guy and he said, nothing in the face. And they just body punched each other while we all, I guess, cheered. While the bloodthirsty mob cheered, nothing in the face. So maybe Walker and Rees was like, hey.
Open hand fight.
Nothing in the face.
Open hand fight.
I don't think Sammy's taking his helmet off and setting it on the boards,
Yeah.
But
was it Ben Myers?
Ben Myers what?
BMW?
No, it was
Brodzinski, Myers, Walker?
I'm going to find out. I don't know.
Okay.
Somebody find out. Producer. It was a couple years ago.
On a serious note with Sammy Walker, and you talked about wanting to be patient before. I love the patient route here. He's 23 years old, and it hasn't been like, oh my gosh, I have to be on this trajectory. And this is kind of the Minnesota trajectory for players. Go to college, be patient, get your chance, and I give him a lot of credit because he seems mature, and Bill Guerin has wanted guys that are leaders in the past, that have high character, that are willing to fit into a team, to a role.
He ran a hockey camp every summer.
Yeah, still does. I was there this summer.
Yeah, and that NIL law changed, and so they were able to start calling it Sammy Walker's hockey camp. But as I understand it, he's just been around the community forever.
Yeah.
And that's great.
He's a good dude, good human, which I think fits into what Bill Guerin is trying to build. But at the end of the day, it's all about what you can do on the ice. You can have a room of 20 great humans full of character, but if they can't play hockey, they're not going to be around. Where he's impressed me is his confidence to go out there and play. And leadership sometimes is recognizing opportunity and being prepared to seize it. And 23 years old, he finally gets his chance to crack the NHL lineup, and he seems mature and ready to take it, right? It's not like he's caught in the bright lights. His first game, Vancouver, his second game at home in front of all the fans, plenty of things to be distracted by. He ends up having a great game, and he makes an impact. And like that's how you have to start if you're a young guy, is just try somehow to have a positive impact on that game. And he's done it with the way that he plays hockey. It's speed. And I think you're right. Like, he burst onto the scenes with the Gophers. He had a great freshman year, and then it was kind of like a plateau. The statistics kind of stay the same. And, what's that going to look like? It becomes harder to make that jump to the American Hockey League, then all of a sudden start produce offensively, then go to the NHL and produce offensively. But right now, he looks like more than just a complementary piece to Matt Boldy. We'll see if he can do that consistently, but he looks like a guy that can absolutely contribute. It's not just that he's first man in on the forecheck trying to free pucks up for Matt Boldy to scoop in and make a beautiful play. I mean, he's the one generating the offense. He made plays with his feet, with his hands.
I feel like the statistician is like doing him dirty too. I looked.
The no assist?
There was nothing.
Yeah.
I'm like, how? I've watched these games. How does this guy he doesn't have any points? I'm like, it doesn't make sense based on what I was seeing. I guess maybe he was going to get the second assist, but it touched the other team or so before it went there.
Again, I do like this sometimes from being on the bench, is you get like the on ice perspective of what occurred there. And at that point, I kind of thought,
that's right. Blake McLaughlin,
little assist. Speaking of assist,
good player.
We gotta give the producer.
Yeah. Hey, thank you
with
Huss.
The big apple there. That's a primary assist from Huss. But the Sammy Walker assist is Sammy Walker won the board battle, so he was getting pinched from the side. He won the board battle, protecting the puck inside, but Connor McDavid was coming up the ice.
Yep.
And McDavid's stick is actually the one that dislodged the puck and sent it out into the neutral zone and then sent Boldy and Gaudreau off on a 2-on-1. So I think that's why they didn't credit the assist. You could see it live, but the cameras have a hard time, I think, picking that one up because the boards were in the way and it was right against the dasher on the bottom. So those ones I think you see go both ways, where sometimes they'll
gotta take care.
They'll just give it.
You gotta.
I know.
Give them a little cake. Give the cake eater some cake. Hey, did you notice last night when there was a scrum breaking out and McDavid grabbed Kirill from behind around his head?
No.
So it was one of those deals like you pair off, and I just thought, oh, that would be, because I would love to see the 97s fight. Kirill would just smoke him.
Do you remember, gosh, who was it? It was the two Russians. It was Ovechkin and Svechnikov.
Oh, and he knocked out
Svechnikov,
who ended up being a nice player, but that was when he was a rookie and he was running his mouth, and he just said, "Good night, Moon." Yeah, he just went, knocked him straight down.
Right, and that's how I feel like it would be in that scenario. Kirill would be Ovechkin.
That's what I think. This is a good card for Kirill to play, is like to randomly pick the other team's superstar. I guess that wouldn't be random. And just beat him up. That's a great element. Like if you were an Edmonton Oiler, like a little kid at the game, and then these two guys are kind of the two marquee names, and then our guy just beats up their guy, that's just because he would. I think Kirill will fight this year, and he will win.
Well, that was one of your bold predictions.
Yeah, I can see it. I know he's curious about it. I can tell that. I see him watching, and he's not shy from getting in there. He'll dive in there when it's already started.
Yeah.
And he's just going to pick the right guy. It might be like Walker. Walker is on to something. This guy, he fought Reeves. If you watch this thing again, this dude was for sure saying nothing to the face. He hit him like 50 times.
I think Walker fighting has you feeling a couple inches taller right now because you're like into it right now.
I might fight someone.
You've never wanted to talk about this. The first thing we discuss when we come in today,
you're
like, hey, I want to know,
Walgreens.
like, whose job is it to fight out there now? We got Reeves in town. Whose job is it to fight?
I'm fighting someone at Walgreens.
You were going to...
So this is a legit...
drop the hoodie and...
This is a legit question. So when you have Reeves, so Reeves comes on here, he basically says, no one will fight me.
Wow.
So you have him. He's the nuclear option. So now the Wild have nukes, right? But no one wants to have a nuclear war, so no one fights Reeves. So what ends up happening? Does Foligno still have to fight? Hartman got hurt fighting, as he's figuring out if he's a Socher or Greaser. Duhaime, Shaw, all these guys. Apparently Sammy Walker gets out of the convertible and fights. What are we doing here? Who's fighting on this team?
Yeah. Well, Reeves.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
He just needs to make people fight him.
Right. And I think, though, what's that saying?
Every playoff team. Like when we play all of these guys.
What's that saying, though? Like you've got to dance with the girl that you went with?
Yeah.
That's kind of how
Reeves.
But that's kind of how it is for everybody too, though. So if you made your living, if you came onto the scenes fighting and being physical and playing with an edge, you still should have to do that. I think it's part of what makes you good. It was part of your appeal and likely a part of the reason why the club wants you.
But hold on. So Marcus Foligno, regular season.
Yep.
I don't want him fighting. If we're in a giant playoff series and he fights Landeskog, awesome. I'm all for that. But like now that we got like a guy, like a guy, why fight? I don't need Hartman out for half a season.
Well, I would say look at how you feel because the guy from Edina got into a little fight and everybody in Edina feels a little bit bigger, a little bit tougher, right? Like I can do that too. Winning a fight can really help your confidence too. And being tougher and then going out there and executing, it can help. And that's where it becomes a mental part of the game. Like again, for me, that all comes down to confidence because all of a sudden, if that's what you did, if that was part of your role, and all of a sudden now you think that you're too good for it.
Yeah, that's weird.
That's hard. That's a hard pill to swallow and a dangerous road to go down because you have to be honest and true with who you are and what makes you good. And it was winning fights that made you feel good, that made you play good. That
I like that. So it's like you go back to the bar and all the longshoremen are sitting there and Marcus, they're like, what happened? You don't fight anymore, Marcus?
Right. His beautiful hair.
Like they just got out of the coal mine.
Right. You got to remember where you came from.
Moose.
But it is.
The Moose doesn't have hooves anymore, huh?
It is Reeves' guy, but I think what it does is it knocks everybody down a peg, where Marcus would have had to, and
He's middleweight now.
yeah, where you would have had to fight the toughest guy. Now he's got to fight the next toughest guy, and that's easier because now all of a sudden that guy gives up an inch and 10 pounds, and it just seems like a more manageable task. I know what happens when a guy like Marcus has an extra inch and a longer reach. It's dangerous.
Yeah. Disconnected, I think, was the phrase we
Disconnected
used for
wires. Midnight.
that. Hey, can we do just a little bit more banter? Just
We
random?
should banter, but I'm getting a little parched.
Oh, are you? What I would do is, if you have some water on the table, but I think you should reach for the best water that's available.
Yeah, and if I were to do that, it would be filtered water from my K5 system at home, installed by Connecticut Home Services, Aquarius Home Services. Yeah, I love it. We have the reverse osmosis water right on tap at the kitchen sink. Downstairs, we've got the water softener. I did run a lot of water out into the rink out back. Froze up nice, iron-free, beautiful water. If I didn't, the pond would, or I should say my rink, which we call Mullet Arena.
I think it should be the Cooley, like
Cooley.
the Lamoureux sisters.
Yeah.
Carter's Cooley.
Let's call it that. It's the Cooley-less Cooley because it would look like a Cooley. The water is dirty. Instead, it comes out beautifully and filtered. I love it. But as we approach the cold season, outdoor rink season, temperatures drop, make sure that you have your HVAC system tuned up and ready to go. Aquarius Home Services can take care of you there. They're not a one-stop shop. They just don't do water, whether you need HVAC, plumbing, electrical, give them a call. They're earning the right to be recommended.
And his
Fantastic.
Boom. Thanks, Dean.
he's back. Okay. Picking up some soap. So the reverse osmosis, is that similar to reverse retro?
No,
No, different.
it is different, but
Can I tell you about a holy smokes moment we've had this season?
you've
Couple
told
of
me
them?
about one or two. I need to know more.
There's a couple more. So I think Jared Spurgeon has had two recently. We had the play where he came down and lifted the stick and got the breakaway ended, and then he had a 2-on-1 yesterday, I think, that he played just perfectly. I think this guy is when you think of a captain and a leader and also a smoky spread they could put on, bread or vegetables. I think of when I think of sensible snacks and great hockey plays recently, my holy smokes moment is Jared Spurgeon on defense breaking up that 2-on-1 last night and stopping that breakaway, I don't know, a week ago. He's been on fire. And if you want to be on fire as a host, get out some holiday treats with Jimmy's. Get the dill, get the spinach, get the ranch dip, get some vegetables out there, maybe on a serving tray. And don't be afraid to bring in the holy smokes smoky dip. Throw it on a piece of bread, throw it on a burger, throw it on a sandwich, or use it as a dip with chips. That's Jimmy's salad dressings and dips, as we like to say. Don't you be messing with the dressing.
Nicely done. And it is entertainment season, and it's so nice to have those dips, vegetables, whatever, right on hand. You can pop over to a friend's house, nice little skate at the outdoor rink.
I got a couple questions for you. These are sort of more in the color business, but do you know the exact time between periods at an NHL game? You must, because you go broadcast and then you have some time, I assume, to yourself. Mm-hmm. What is if I were, the buzzer sounds, I'm at the X, I want to get some mini donuts or a drink, and I want to be back at my seats for the start of play. Is it 17 minutes on the button?
I think it's 17 minutes.
Okay. Now, do you know from a youth hockey game what it is?
About 90 seconds?
No. I'm talking they clean the ice. I'm saying older, maybe a Pee Wee or Bantam. For
10
high
minutes.
school. 10? I've been told 13. I tried to test it the other day, but the thing with me is I always forget to start it when I get back in. But I think the answer is 13. So if you were going to the parking lot to get something to drink or whatever, walk into Saks and White Bear, I think you have 13 minutes on the button.
13 minutes on the button for that. I think that all depends on the Zamboni driver too. So at XL Energy Center, they have the same guys and they've got it absolutely dialed. So you can be 17 minutes, you're ready to go.
And they put it on the clock, so
Right.
that's a little
So they've
different.
got their games and other stuff they do, but the Zamboni drivers have it dialed. You can have a Zamboni driver that misses a swipe at the youth arena, and then he's got to take another.
He's got to
one.
do an
That's
extra.
That's a 16-minute.
That's not good. So this is my last thing. I believe that nachos are the official food of hockey. And I wanted to just get your take on that. I was at a rink a couple times this weekend. So baseball.
Soft cheese.
Yep. So Cracker Jack, peanuts and stuff, baseball. It seems like football would be like burgers and brats and, grill stuff. I don't know about basketball. But hockey, nachos are ours.
So let's get through these
jalapeno.
Nachos. When I think
soft cheese.
Yeah.
Not enough cheese typically. This weekend, I had too much cheese, had to go back and get more chips, which has never happened in the history of nachos or hockey. But I think nachos belong to us.
Okay, I could see that. But again, just to clarify, the nachos are the
bin.
It's
for
the
cheese.
Clear little thing, the bin
It's
for
a plastic
cheese.
thing. It has the little slot.
Circle chips.
Jalapenos on the top of the chips.
Canned jalapenos.
Yes, canned jalapenos. And if you've done your job, you ask them to pour cheese on the chips as well, beyond the tub.
Oh, that's a terrible idea.
No, because there's never enough cheese.
The only complaint I have with those nachos is that the chips will get soggy. So you got to eat those ones with cheese on it first. Otherwise
Yeah, you eat those standing in the concourse area.
But then it's also weird. Like if one part of your chip is soggy, the rest is crispy. Then you go back to the cheese, and so anyways, I like the cheese
just in the container.
Just in the container. But
I'm just telling you that's not enough cheese.
Okay.
So
maybe
what you could do is put it on the
chips.
bottom. I mean, that gets really weird. That's like asking for butter in the middle of your popcorn. But if I said, hey, before you put the chips in the other side of the container, will you do a small layer of cheese in the bottom in there? That could be smart on those last ones, but they might get soggy too.
Yeah.
I'm just saying these belong to us. Nachos are ours. That's our food.
Nachos and a nice water from your K5 Kinetico system, reverse osmosis to wash it down.
Yeah.
I like that.
That's good.
That's good. Let's get into the shorthanded prowess of the Minnesota Wild right now, because I don't think the penalty kill is getting enough love.
Where does it rank?
I think it was 11th before yesterday's game. I haven't had the updated stats right now, but it's about okay. They were 1 for 5 against Edmonton, which in my opinion is a huge win. Edmonton's power plays clicking at 30%. If you give up 5 and only give up 1 goal, I should say 5 penalties or power plays against, and you give up 1 goal, that's a huge win, 20%. And yeah, you'd love to shut them out, but I could dive through the stats. If Edmonton's gotten 5 power plays, they've scored in every single game, and that's just the way it is. But keeping them to 1 was huge.
What are we doing on the kill, and who's doing it?
I think there was they're doing a really good job right now just getting their clears. So when they get the chance to send it all the way down the ice, and they did a nice job last night, and Edmonton can ad-lib on their zone entries, and they can confuse you a little bit because McDavid just wants to come up the ice going Mach 12 and force you into a bad spot. But the Wild did a good job throwing those guys off and jumping on loose pucks and sending them down. So and then obviously Marc-Andre Fleury did his job in that regard too. But what I want to say is with the shorthanded goals in Dewar and Shaw, the Wild are 79% on the penalty kill right now. If you net it out with the 6 shorties that they have, it's about 85.3%, and that would bring you to the best penalty kill in the league. And when I was playing, sometimes that's the way we'd look at it. Okay, we've given up 20 PPs, we've got 79%, but we've scored 6 on it, so we're clicking at about 85%, and you're feeling real good about yourself. I think the penalty kill needs to pat themselves on the back for that too, because now all of a sudden power plays, as they're scouting you too, they say, okay, you've got to be careful when there's a guy like Connor Dewar out there because he's got a good eye and a good stick and you're not going to catch him. So last man back, I think we saw Barry panic a little bit last night too in a couple spots because he was fumbling the puck and it was instant retreat. And that conceded zone time. He lost that battle. Puck was out. And the Wild killed their offense on it. Shaw, Dewar. And Dewar, man, we talked about him last podcast too. Just like shot out of a cannon, shorthanded opportunity every time. He just continues to do it.
And he's so fast, it doesn't look. It's like those old films of Babe Ruth running. Like it looks like fast forward.
Oh, all of a sudden he's just gone, like shot out of a cannon. And he's right there with him. I do want to compliment Shaw a little bit more to him, elaborate on it, because I think the greatest compliment you can give a player is that you make the players that you play with better. And I think Shaw is one of those guys. I mean,
Dewar loves playing with him.
He loves him. He
loves it.
I think you see a level
Changed his whole, like his ceiling just went way up playing with him.
And I think that's across the board. And Shaw, man, if you like going into yesterday's game, he had more points than guys like Marcus Foligno, Freddie Gaudreau. If you were to look at it, you're like, oh my gosh, this guy somehow sneaky has double-digit points, and he's playing 10 minutes a night, and
he
he's
brings the
finding ways to do
broken
it.
sticks back to the farm.
Yeah, brings them back to the farm.
To prod animals,
Yeah.
I guess.
But massive props to a guy that can do that. And I'm not taking anything away from Dewar. I do think that his game has come in. He's been more mature. He looked ready to take on a bigger role. And he's the first 10, 12 games of the year, he was good. Just since then and since the inclusion of Shaw, he's been better than good.
So Hartman is working his way back, hopefully. I don't know exactly when that's going to happen, but I think that's going to be noticed. That's going to be a notable return, right? I was looking, obviously, he had the career year last year with 65 points, the 38 special, team-friendly deal, friend of the program, I think we're safe to say. How big a shot in the arm do you think it'll be having Hartman back? It seems like the guys love this guy. When Goose had his game, he's got the one arm, he's throwing water on him. I think everybody's happier having Hartman riding with him.
I agree. It will be a big shot in the arm. And then all of a sudden, again, now let's bring Sammy Walker back into the equation, and even Mason Shaw or something. It's like, okay, well, where do these guys fit now? Right? So if you have Duhame back, if you have Ryan Hartman back, and Dean Evison, the Wild have been playing shorthanded all year. And Dean's never had a full deck to deal, right? And he even at points had to healthy scratch guys. And Addison was the most recent. He didn't like the way he's defending, getting back to your -10. Addison was great on the power play, but he needed to defend a little harder, and he was given a little bit too much room in the defensive zone. And he was challenged. He sat out a game. He's come back, responded, been good. When you have a full deck of cards, you can all of a sudden do those things, and you can manage guys and make their game better, more consistent, because you have the hammer, playing time. When you're shorthanded, you're like, you're playing. Doesn't matter. I have to play you. I have to play you. I have to play you. So it'll be a big shot in the arm, I think, to have everybody there, and everybody's game will have to rise, because all of a sudden playing time gets spread really thin. And that's the one thing everybody's absolutely chasing, is more time on ice. And you have to share that with more bodies. You start to recognize, oh my goodness, this board's getting real tight. I got to be good.
And the thing people got to remember is it takes a second for people to come back. Like this grief line now is just clicking. Like even just watching Greenway skate out here weeks ago, where he was in all the pain, just skating circles, and now he just looks like he's playing free. Hartman's going to take a minute to figure it out there, right? But I'm very anxious to see where he's at. Once he feels like Ryan Hartman, I think that adds a lot to the team.
I agree. So actually, you could almost count him as an addition right now. He's been gone for a while, but
it's like making a trade almost.
Yeah, exactly. And it's kind of funny because Bill Guerin's been away, and I've seen some chatter on the social networks like, "Where's Billy? He's out scouting a top 6 forward. Where has he been?" And
where is that, like a Hamlin game?
Watching his son.
Well. So the Minnesota perspective on all this. I don't know if this is your buddies, but Minnesotans can only see the world through like Minnesota colored glasses. So everybody's like, well, we're Brock Besser. We're going to get Brock Besser. It's kind of like the Sammy Walker thing. Like, well, it's almost like we're the royal family.
Right. Son's coming home.
The Prince of Wales in Vancouver is unhappy, and he would be a good addition. I just don't, I would say Besser would maybe fill the net, but I'm sure he's expensive and all that. But so you think he's out there looking for another forward?
No, I think he was at GM meetings. He's literally just like having to do normal work. There's nothing behind the story, and people are just reading.
He's just watching Star Wars.
Too much into it.
Like at a restaurant.
He's just doing his job. I don't think there's anything under the cloak and dagger that he's like trying to pilfer some top 6 forward from somebody. Don't get me wrong. I think he'd like to bolster the lineup if at all possible. But I think people fall in love. But part of the reason, again, we started this podcast is because Minnesota sports fans have some funny nuance to them. And
That's
hopefully
one way. That's one way to put it.
to expose it, bring it to light, so then we can maybe work through it a little bit. And that's one, because Minnesotans love when somebody comes back home and plays, but then as soon as that person has a bad game, it's like, of course, everybody just wants their son to come, or, they just want their neighbor to play, and then all of a sudden they're mad because their neighbor's no good anymore, and it's like amazing how fast.
But the same person that wanted them to come
is the
same person that all of a sudden steps out of their body. And
of course, he's only here because he's from Minnesota.
Oh, the Burnsville boy, Brock Besser, going to roll out the red carpet for him. Looks like he can't do anything. Yeah, but it's like almost the next day, and it's like they have no memory of doing that.
Right, and then it's like, don't let the door hit you where the good Lord split you. Get this guy out of here. He's only here because he's from Minnesota.
But hey, we're fixing that. That's why we're here, Carts. and I think I like the way we're playing hockey. I like that we're learning to swim while holding a 45-pound weight. I think it's going to benefit us later on. And if it's not, I'm going to be super pissed. But I think it is. I'm working through my Minnesota stuff.
Yeah. But is
I don't
it
care
helpful
about
to bring
last
it to
season.
light?
Hey,
Because
don't
we're
talk
working
to me
through
about
it.
last season.
We're working through it.
I don't care about last season. I don't.
That actually is a super hard challenge to not compare it to last year.
That's one of our
but it is
mantras here at this
It is
podcast.
different.
We don't care about last season.
But we do.
We don't. Not last season.
We loved it.
No, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. There's only one thing that matters.
We're here.
Till it's here.